Amidst the swirling, incomprehensible chaos of human existence, a planet teeming with billions of unique consciousnesses, you found yourself standing across from one specific individual. In a universe of infinite possibilities, of chance encounters, of fleeting connections and sudden severances, you chose this person. You chose them to share the most intimate spaces of your life, to witness your vulnerability, to be the anchor and the wind in the sails of your journey. This choice, seemingly born of romantic impulse, material convenience, or emotional necessity, harbors a depth that reaches far beyond the comprehension of our fleeting, earthly minds. It is in the deep quiet of the soul that the truth resides. For many, that initial intoxicating illusion of perfection eventually dissolves, replaced by the stark, unrelenting light of shared reality. It is then, in the crucible of daily life, amidst the clashing of habits, the painful misunderstandings and the moments of profound, isolated doubt, that the searing question arises: was this a mistake? Did I fundamentally err in binding my destiny to this soul? This moment of existential crisis, where one battles the paralyzing fear of having entered into a lifelong covenant with the wrong person, is the very starting point of spiritual revelation. Yet the profound teachings of the ancient wisdom suggest that within the intricate map drawn by your immortal soul, there are no accidents, and therefore there can be no mistakes of this magnitude. This union, which often feels like a relentless battleground, is in fact a meticulously crafted karmic encounter, a spiritual appointment orchestrated by forces far wiser than our temporal desires. The person who challenges your patience to the breaking point, who seems perfectly engineered to irritate your deepest sensibilities, and who forces you to confront your own limitations, is not present in your life by the capricious hand of fortune. They are there by an urgent, mutual spiritual necessity, a non-negotiable evolutionary obligation that both your spirits agreed to undertake. Life, as a stage for spiritual drama, never unites two individuals randomly or out of mere sentimental whim. It brings together two parallel narratives that require merging, often painfully, to co-author a necessary chapter of profound learning, moral rectification, and ultimate spiritual transformation. These two souls converged to exchange vital lessons, to expose one another's hidden spiritual wounds, and to ignite aspects of the self that in solitude neither would ever have the courage, the opportunity, or the external pressure to confront. To fully grasp the essence of your marriage, one must first accept the foundational premise of spiritual philosophy, the pre-existence and immortality of the soul, and the cyclical nature of reincarnation. From this higher perspective, the marriage bond ceases to be merely a legal or social agreement and reveals its true nature as an urgent spiritual contract. This contract was not drafted in a lawyer's office or signed with a flourish on your wedding day. It was established in the luminous, silent realms of the spiritual plane, within the presence of higher guiding intelligences, and long before either partner drew their first breath in this current earthly existence. In that realm of profound clarity, where the illusions of the material world hold no sway, the soul, looking ahead at the next incarnation, assesses its spiritual balance sheet. It recognizes the specific moral debts it needs to liquidate, the virtues it must acquire, and the imperfections it is obliged to cleanse. It is with this precise inventory of necessities that the soul voluntarily chooses the trials, the challenges, the relationships, and the circumstances that will best serve its accelerated evolution. Your current spouse was not found through random chance, but was selected as the perfect co-agent, the most formidable yet loving collaborator for this necessary work. Both of your souls, operating from a level of pure, benevolent purpose, agreed to the terms of engagement. You consciously consented to be the instrument of testing for them, and they, with equal commitment, agreed to play the role of your mirror, your teacher, and sometimes your necessary tormentor. This contract is not about finding comfort or perpetual bliss. It is a sacred, urgent covenant to provide the exact, often bitter medicine required for mutual moral progress. To honor this bond is to silence the fleeting, immediate doubt fueled by the ego, and kneel instead to the enduring wisdom of the soul's chosen mission. The inherent tension within many marriages is the direct manifestation of the law of mutual complementarity, a principle dictating that souls are drawn together not by identical interests, but by reciprocal spiritual needs. Your soul, yearning for completeness and moral balance, consciously seeks out a partner who possesses the exact qualities, moral, intellectual, or temperamental, that it currently lacks or needs desperately to integrate. This results in the frequent pairing of individuals who appear to be opposites. The fiercely organized, married to the creative chaos, the explosive temper tied to quiet, enduring patience, the intensely intellectual wedded to the profoundly intuitive. This pairing is deliberate. The purpose is not to highlight differences for the sake of conflict, but to engage in a spiritual exchange. The organized partner must learn flexibility, tolerance for the imperfect, and the liberating joy of spontaneity from the creative one. Conversely, the chaotic soul is forced, through daily exposure and friction, to internalize discipline, structure, and responsibility. The friction is the grinding mechanism of growth. The qualities you find admirable and deeply attractive in your partner are the virtues you need to acquire. The traits you find irritating or deficient are often the excesses or voids within your own character that need balancing. If you struggle with pride, you may be paired with someone who, through their humility or lack of ambition, forces you to reassess your values. If you are excessively cold or detached, you may find yourself bound to a soul whose overwhelming need for affection compels you to open your heart. Your partner, in essence, carries the spiritual pieces you are missing to become a whole, balanced being. This recognition transforms the relationship from a struggle against differences into a unified labor of mutual self-construction, where the union is the only place where the missing moral and emotional components can be recognized, challenged, and ultimately integrated. One of the most essential and often painful functions of the karmic partner is to serve as the perfect, unblinking mirror to your shadow self. From the spiritual perspective, self-knowledge is the cornerstone of all moral advancement, yet the human ego possesses an extraordinary capacity for self-deception and avoidance. We are expert at rationalizing our faults, projecting our deficiencies onto the world, and keeping the most difficult truths about our character locked away in the dungeon of our subconscious. This is where the spouse steps in, fulfilling their necessary, challenging role. Your partner, simply by existing and reacting to life in their authentic way, becomes the instrument of a necessary, divine exposure. They embody the circumstances, the moral deficiency, or the emotional trigger that forces your hidden flaws, your impatience, your deep-seated insecurities, your tendency toward control, or your inherent selfishness, into the blinding light of the present moment. Think about the unique capacity your partner has to trigger reactions in you that no one else can manage. They know, with agonizing surgical precision, the exact words that will cause you to explode, the gestures that disarm your facade, and the silent assumptions that cause your inner peace to disintegrate. This precise knowledge is not accidental. It is a fundamental element of the spiritual engineering of your union. Your partner reflects back to you not who they are, but who you are when faced with their particular expression of reality. The deep anger or profound disappointment you feel toward them is, in many instances, the projection of an unaddressed weakness or a latent vice within yourself. By acting as this perfect spiritual mirror, your spouse compels you to move beyond superficial self-assessment and forces a painful, yet mandatory confrontation with the less savory aspects of your own soul. The pain of the reflection is the pain of an ego being stripped bare, preparing the way for genuine, lasting moral change. The intense, often inexplicable bond that draws two souls into marriage is frequently rooted in connections forged across numerous previous incarnations. In the vast, complex web of spiritual life, souls encounter each other repeatedly, acting as family, friends, mentors, rivals, and sometimes even outright enemies. It is these ancient relationships, marked by intense emotional exchanges, both love and hatred, acts of great service, and acts of profound injustice, that form the foundation of your present karmic union. Many karmic marriages are not merely the coming together of two compatible individuals, but the mandated reunion of souls with unsettled accounts, a necessity for reconciliation, or the liquidation of long-standing debts. Perhaps in a distant past, one partner severely wronged the other, or they were rivals in a struggle that left deep spiritual scars. Now they return as husband and wife, placed in a relationship of unavoidable intimacy and mutual dependency, with a singular objective: to complete the unfinished narrative. The intensity of attraction, the feeling of instant recognition or déjà vu, often points to this ancient familiarity. This reunion is designed to provide the perfect setting to heal those millennia-old resentments, to transcend the old programming of rivalry, and to learn the difficult lesson of mutual forgiveness. The recurring conflicts in your marriage, the emotional loops you cannot seem to break, are frequently echoes of those past interactions, the lingering spiritual charge of old wounds demanding attention. By binding your lives together, the universe creates the perfect, inescapable pressure cooker, where those historic debts must be settled, old offenses must be buried through acts of patience and tolerance, and the stories that cried out in the spiritual void can finally find their compassionate completion. The ultimate goal is to convert the energy of past enmity or intense codependency into a balanced, mature, and constructive relationship of affection and mutual respect. Within the philosophy of spiritual trials, the concept of the gift of irritation holds profound significance. That which you identify as your spouse's most frustrating and unbearable moral, intellectual, or emotional defect is, from the soul's perspective, the precise custom-made teaching tool required for your own development. The intense visceral reaction of irritation or impatience you experience is merely the spiritual pain of resistance, your ego fighting the forced development of a necessary, opposing virtue. Consider, for example, a spouse who is excessively demanding, constantly controlling and insistent on meticulous order. Your soul, perhaps having lived many lives cultivating laziness, irresponsibility, or emotional immaturity, is now being forcibly challenged to acquire the virtues of discipline, structure, self-control, and accountability. The partner's demanding nature is the irritating but effective mechanism by which these virtues are pressed into your character. Or perhaps your spouse is emotionally withdrawn, profoundly silent, and incapable of the expansive affection you crave. If your own soul has a deeply rooted pattern of dependence, emotional neediness, or a crippling fear of abandonment, this partner is perfectly engineered to force you to cease seeking validation and love outside of yourself. They compel you to turn inward and learn the arduous but essential lesson of self-sufficiency and inner peace. Their inability to fulfill your external craving forces you to cultivate the resources within. This is not arbitrary punishment. It is the highest form of spiritual education. The most effective, persistent, and undeniable teacher for this harsh lesson is the very person who exhibits the virtue or vice in its purest form and who lives it constantly in the unavoidable reality of your shared existence. They inspire you, demand accountability from you, and compel your growth through the very mechanism of their daily presence. The vast majority of enduring marital conflicts are traceable to the fundamental divergence between the choices made by the soul and the preferences held by the temporary, perishable ego. The ego, tied intimately to the experiences of the current material body and personality, is inherently focused on comfort, immediate gratification, external validation, and the avoidance of pain. It desires a partner who acts as an emotional blanket, a source of unquestioning support, someone who validates its idealized self-image and never presents a significant challenge. This fragile ego seeks ease, predictability, and a relationship that perfectly mirrors the limited, comfortable world it has built for itself. The soul, by contrast, is eternal, wise, and ruthlessly focused on accelerated moral refinement. It understands that genuine, lasting spiritual growth only occurs through the friction of challenge, the crucible of trial, and the painful process of stripping away layers of imperfection. Therefore, the soul, prior to incarnation, often makes a deliberate and profound choice to unite with the individual who possesses the greatest potential to disrupt the ego's comfort, expose its pretenses, and compel radical self-examination. This deep internal chasm, the conflict between the personality's desire for a placid existence and the soul's unwavering need for rigorous moral development, is the engine that powers 99% of marital disputes. When you encounter a trait in your spouse that absolutely terrifies or profoundly disappoints you, resist the immediate descent into victimhood or resentment. Instead, become insatiably curious, asking, "What is this irritating characteristic desperately trying to teach me? Which festering spiritual wound Is it deliberately prodding so that I might finally have the courage to excise it? The karmic marriage is not the naive quest for a perfect partner. It is the demanding, rigorous alliance of two profoundly imperfect beings who have pledged to serve as the relentless instruments of one another's complete, often terrifying, self-actualization. The concept of a spiritual trial encompasses not only the acquisition of new virtues, but critically, the resolution and healing of deep-seated psychological and spiritual traumas carried over from past existences. The marriage environment is, by design, the safest, most intense laboratory for this profound internal surgery. Since the commitment is rooted in love and mutual contract, it provides the necessary foundation of trust for vulnerabilities to be exposed without the risk of total disintegration. Often souls carrying specific paralyzing fears, such as the terror of abandonment, a profound inability to trust others, or deep-seated issues of self-worth, will deliberately choose a life partner who will continuously, even if subtly, activate that specific pain point. If your life is plagued by a paralyzing fear of being left alone, your soul may have chosen a partner with a fiercely independent, freedom-loving spirit. This choice forces you into the necessary, painful practice of learning that true love is fundamentally about freedom and trust, not about control or spiritual possession. The constant activation of your abandonment trigger is not a system failure. It is the core mechanism of your healing. The pain forces you to turn your attention inward, to find the source of security within your own being, rather than continuously begging for it from an external source. Within the emotional security of the marriage, you are given countless daily opportunities, little tests of patience, flexibility, and forgiveness, to practice the very virtues that will neutralize your deepest trauma. The mutual triggers you experience are the primary, most powerful tools of healing you have agreed to offer each other. Exposed wounds are painful, but they are the only ones that can be properly cleansed, dressed, and finally healed forever. A central, difficult lesson in karmic relationships is recognizing the precise boundary of your spiritual responsibility. You are not bound to your spouse to fix them, to alter their moral deficiencies, or to take responsibility for their path of purification. Their evolution remains entirely their own responsibility. However, the profound truth is that you have been contracted to serve as the absolute catalyst for their transformation, just as they are the catalyst for yours. A catalyst in spiritual chemistry is an agent that initiates or accelerates a reaction without being permanently consumed or changed by it. You and your spouse are like two volatile chemical agents. When separated, their individual effects are minimal, but when placed together, they create an explosive, purifying, and profoundly synergistic reaction. Your simple, authentic presence in their life, the way you react to their flaws, and the moral strength you exhibit in your own actions act as a constant stimulus. They activate the raw materials within you that must be addressed, and you perform the same activation within them. In this relentless process of mutual activation, a profound, simultaneous healing occurs. Many couples spend decades trapped in the same repetitive karmic loops, arguing over the same trivialities, repeating the same toxic patterns, precisely because they fail to see the fundamental lesson being presented. They spend all their emotional energy blaming the other person for the pain or the conflict, rather than taking conscious, spiritual responsibility for their own internal response and necessary self-cure. When the fighting is about money, the real lesson is not about currency, but about values, emotional security, and mutual trust. When the conflict is about time or attention, the lesson is about learning to demonstrate love and respect in ways the other person can actually understand and acknowledge. The profound realization is that by focusing solely on your own required growth, you become the most powerful agent of change in your partner's life, fulfilling your role as their most potent catalyst. The spiritual contract of marriage often extends beyond the two immediate individuals to address the ancestral spiritual landscape. In many cases, two souls unite who carry strikingly similar familial or generational patterns, cycles of toxic communication, deep-seated abandonment issues, financial mismanagement, or entrenched emotional coldness passed down through their respective lineages. Their union is, in effect, a collective mandated obligation to break these inherited dysfunctional cycles that have caused suffering across generations. The marriage becomes the designated crucible where the toxic inheritance must be purified. For instance, If both partners come from homes where communication was passive-aggressive or emotionally abusive, their current marriage represents the singular, non-negotiable opportunity to learn how to express needs, feelings, and conflicts in a clean, healthy, and direct manner. If both carry the legacy of emotional abandonment, the constant, unwavering presence and unconditional love they practice with each other becomes the unique spiritual therapy for mutual healing. Conversely, if one comes from a family characterized by rigid discipline and the other from a background of excessive permissiveness, they are brought together to find the sacred middle ground to create a new form of relationship that integrates the best moral lessons from both lineages while decisively rejecting the inherited toxicity. The karmic marriage, viewed in this light, offers a rare, profound opportunity to reauthor the spiritual history of their family line, to halt the downward-flowing currents of generational suffering, and to establish new, upward-flowing lineages of conscious love and moral healing. When you and your spouse successfully transform conflict into compassionate understanding and disagreement into spiritual growth, you are not merely healing your individual selves, you are performing essential, retroactive, and prospective spiritual work that impacts and purifies entire generations, both those who came before and those yet to come. The highest and often final dimension of a fully realized karmic union is the recognition that the souls did not unite solely for the purpose of their individual or mutual evolution. They converged because they have a specific, joint labor to perform in the world, a mission of service, charity, or creation that neither could manifest with the same power or effectiveness alone. The combined energy, the complementary talents, and the now purified spiritual base of their union are meant to be deployed for a greater collective good. This joint mission can manifest in countless ways. It may be the sacred responsibility of raising and educating children with a heightened spiritual awareness, thus injecting a powerful new moral force into the coming generations. It could be the establishment of a business or a creative endeavor that impacts the world with a unique message of hope or service. An endeavor that only makes complete sense through the synergy of their combined perspectives and strengths. It could simply be their combined presence in the community, manifesting a living example of mature, conscious love that serves as a silent, powerful beacon for others. Many marriages undergo periods of intense tribulation, often feeling like a passage through the deepest inferno, precisely because they are being rigorously tested and refined in preparation for this ultimate mission. The conflicts are not a prelude to destruction, but the necessary heating and hammering to forge a solid, enduring foundation of spiritual steel, a prerequisite for the higher responsibilities that the universe is preparing to entrust to them. Your soul chose this person because their unique talents, perspectives, and spiritual gifts, when combined with yours, create something unique, infinitely more potent, and deeply needed by the world. They are the essential ingredient that, when mixed with you, creates a new, transformative, alchemical result that benefits the spiritual collective. In the final luminous analysis, it becomes profoundly clear: your marriage was not born of coincidence, was never a mistake, and certainly did not arise from random chance. It is a deeply intentional karmic rendezvous, precisely orchestrated by the relentless, purposeful wisdom of the universe to compel your soul toward its highest possible state of being. Your spouse is not the magical, mythical half of your soul that will complete you. Rather, they are your dedicated co-laborer in evolution, your most honest teacher, and the most powerful catalyst for growth you will ever encounter. Accepting this truth does not promise an immediate cessation of challenges, but it fundamentally reframes every single difficulty. It transforms every conflict, every disagreement, every moment of profound irritation into an opportunity, a necessary, precious chance to ascend one more step on the endless staircase of consciousness. The wisdom of the ages insists that the only true, enduring love is the mature love, the conscious love. A love that is not built on the romantic illusion of the early days, which idealizes the other and conveniently ignores their flaws. This is the profound love that sees the inherent struggle, the shadow, the chaos, and the occasional ugliness, and yet deliberately, consciously, and painfully chooses to remain committed to the contract. This quality of love is not an automatic endowment. It is painstakingly built through a sequence of daily, agonizing choices. It is the choice to extend forgiveness when every fiber of your being cries out for revenge or resentment. It is the choice to strive for deep comprehension when you feel most misunderstood and unjustly attacked. It is the choice to voluntarily grow when it would be infinitely easier to retreat into the comfortable fortress of your old era. And it is the brave choice to surrender your ego to the purpose when every instinct screams for you to flee the overwhelming pressure. Every single time you and your partner choose understanding over judgment, spiritual progress over ego gratification, and patience over reaction, you are fulfilling the profound destiny of your karmic contract. You are not just surviving. You are transforming two separate spirits into a unified, mighty, and enduring force of spiritual power and unconditional healing.